All right, everybody. Fantastic. Welcome back to the Bird Feeder. Again, yes, it's on Zoom, but this is not Zoom. This is a place to put your talons on a piece of wood, nibble some suet, relax, unwind. We got a fantastic guest again for our latest round. Mike Pierantozzi is he's at the top of the game right now. He's where many of us know that you will be as I look across the Brady Bunch screen here. You guys will be in a number of years. But just some of the names of the places that Mike has stopped. You know, he's currently at Vayner, which is, you know, again, your parents may know VaynerMedia. It's just one of those places that it's busted beyond just the industry. But Saatchi and Saatchi, Ogilvy, and of course, local powerhouse Red Teddimer. Mike's trophy case behind him in the corner there has got a Cannes Lion. It's got One Show Gold, lots of other awards. His work has appeared in Archive and maybe not this issue of the CA, but I tell you what, I hope many of you have your issue out there. This is, you know, this is like the Toys R Us catalog for us ad nerds. So Mike has got an impressive track record. He started, you know, as we were saying before, he started in the account ranks, but transitioned to what clearly looks like his natural habitat, which is the world of creative.
Yep.
So as we go through, you know, listen, relax. We'll have a conversation at the end of Mike's primary conversation. Mike, I don't know how you want to handle questions, if you want them on the fly or.
Yeah, look, thank you so much for that introduction. It's really kind of you. I'm super psyched to be here. I've done a few of these, and I actually love, you know, speaking to students, speaking to anybody really that'll listen to me about about the things that I'm going to talk to you guys about tonight. As Joe said, I'm a Philly guy. I grew up in Drexel Hill actually, and I went to St. Joe's, and you know, I got my first kind of real job in advertising in Philadelphia, which was at Red Teddimer, and really got a great start at that place. I think it was like the 12th or 13th person that was hired there, and I spent a good amount of time there, and then I moved to New York and worked at all those other places. And you know, I always chased the work, right? Like I never chased, if I can give you some advice at the top, like I never chased the money. I always try to put myself in the places that I think I was going to get the best opportunities to do work. And then I would just punch as far above that particular place as I could. And then as I go, I'd kind of get to better places. And right now I'm at a place called VaynerMedia. Vayner's like a really interesting shop. It's run by a guy called Gary Vaynerchuk. He's a bit of a man about town in the industry right now. He's kind of widely, he's quite a controversial figure, and he's not widely loved by the establishment advertising community, the Madison Avenue community, because what he brings to the table is something, you know, really different. Like at Vayner, we're trying to do creative in a really different way. We have a way of working and a philosophy that is very different from how the industry works, which is, I'll just tell you a little about it, and then I'll kind of go into my presentation. It's called the volume model, and what the volume model is create, and this is, you know, in Gary's eyes and the folks that live there, this is where the industry's going. Like, it's not big TV commercials. It's not spending 3 months on something to bring it to the client with your hat in your hand and saying, buy it, buy it, buy it. Volume model is putting lots of minimal viable products out into the world at scale, which is like something that you can make on your desktop right now, and seeing which of those ideas kind of pop. And when we find right, we invest more in those ideas. So when you get to the point where you're really spending money on commercials and things like that, you already have something that you know is going to work. It's a way to kind of democratize creativity. It's very customer focused rather than, you know, having a jerk like me kill your work, you know, just because I subjectively don't like it or like it. And it's a really different way of working. It's quite refreshing. And for somebody that's kind of done it the other way for such a long time, it's really interesting to be a part of. And I think you'll start to see other agencies, you know, moving towards something that feels much more like this model as people like get off TV and they're on their devices all the time. A lot of what we do starts on this, and it could end up on something else, but a lot of it starts on this. And I'll get into that a little bit in my presentation. So what I'm going to talk to you guys about today is basically my 2020. And my 2020 breaks down into two parts, which was the Super Bowl, where we did an idea for planners where we killed and resurrected Mr. Peanut, and then COVID, which was everything else this year. And I'm going to talk a little bit about production and making during COVID, the challenges that we faced and how we overcame some of those challenges, and how we really had to think differently about making and how, being put in a bit of a box isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? Being faced with a challenge like the production is shut down, and being able to produce kind of forces you to think in a different way. And I think that's really important in this industry, is like, you can't keep doing the same things over and over and over again. And when you get something like COVID, it forces you to think differently. So hopefully you'll get some of that from the presentation. But first things first, I want to talk to you about the big thing that I've done over the last year, which is like we killed Mr. Peanut, which was a really incredible journey project with a lot of ups and downs. But I'd love to like give you a little like inside baseball on like how we did it and what went down. So if you're ready, to open the presentation, I can kind of start there.
Absolutely.
All right. How much time do we have, by the way?
As much as you need.
Okay.
All right, how's that look? Is that good?
That's good. Hold on one second.
We got full screen on Mr. Peanut there.
Yeah, there he is. Okay, can you go to the next one? Next page, please. Thank you. So the journey on the Super Bowl actually started on the Super Bowl in 2019. We ran a spot. It was a really simple spot. It was my first week at Vayner, and I went to go shoot a Super Bowl commercial, which was pretty cool. And it did very, very well. And we got about 4 billion media impressions. So media impressions are essentially, anytime you as a person interact with a story, that's an impression, right? So if you see something on your phone, or you see it on TV, or you see it on your phone 10 times, that's 10 impressions, right? So our brief this year, when we talk about a brief, and I'm sure you guys talk about briefs, like, which is the assignment, and the insight. It was a really simple brief. They basically said, we want to pretty much double the largest impression count that we've ever gotten at Kraft the following year. So that was it, 7.7 billion eyeballs. So, that was a very, very tall order to kind of double it. So, so again, if you go to the next page, we had a hypothesis about Mr. Peanut and like how much people loved him or didn't love him. And when I was talking about creative at scale, like the way we work at Vayner allowed us to put like hundreds of pieces of content out into the world. And what we found is that like people loved Mr. Peanut, right? Like we more so than we knew. Like we were able to kind of get him into culture. He's been around for, I don't know, 104 years or something like that. It's like this idea of like getting a 104-year-old mascot into culture seemed quite far-fetched. But like as we started putting work out there, we realized that people loved Mr. Peanut, and people knew Mr. Peanut, and people wanted to interact with Mr. Peanut. So I'm just going to give you an example of this, because the way Vayner works is we'll put something out in the world that we call a minimum viable product, which is basically a tweet. In this case, it was a illustration of a sneaker, right? And that was the first step. When Zion Williams blew his sneaker out, we did an illustration of the Peanut sneaker and tweeted it at Nike and said, hey, if you need a new sneaker, Zion, we made one for you. And that got a lot of attention. And that led to this, if you want to hit play.
Oh, man, almost like he did it on purpose. Look at that.
Joe, we can't see it.
You can't see it?
Right.
Oh, I could see it.
Oh, you could see it? I could.
It's a little laggy, but I think we're just gonna have to.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the world of Zoom, but it's
Yeah.
all right. I'll go back, and you can hear it too.
Okay.
My concern was no one could hear it because that's always the audio gets wonky. All right, here it comes.
Like he did it on purpose. Look at that. With a
Zion Williamson is down. He blew through his shoe. Yeah. Look at his left shoe. He blew completely through the shoe.
Hey, sneakerheads, listen up.
Planters Peanuts has rolled out a new sneaker.
These are called Crunch Force One, the takeoff of Nike's Air Force Ones.
The company says its shoe is made of premium leather, has a Mr. Peanut tongue and a peanut insole.
And they're not edible.
So the Crunch Force One, I've saved a pair because hopefully on StockX they'll go up to $25,000, and that's how I'm going to put my kids through college. And but I think the thing that we learned there, and there's a line in there that makes sense. It's like we extended Planters' reach beyond the snack aisle and got into something like sneaker culture, which is crazy when you're an old brand trying to reach a younger audience. And we did this time, and that's probably the best example of how our model works, which is like a tweet, and the tweet was loved, and because the tweet was loved, we had permission to spend money on the sneaker, and because the sneaker was anticipated, we had permission to spend money on the shoot because we know it was going to work. And then when it got out into the world, we already knew it was going to be a hit. So when you go to a client with something like that model, it's hard to resist this idea of like almost money. I watched Moneyball last night, and I think it's like you're moneyballing creativity, right? So when you get to the point where you're asking clients to spend money on something, you already have an idea that's working and that's there, rather than sitting down and writing a bunch of commercials and being like, here, pick one. You have something that's already worked. So it's a very appealing model to clients. So the Super Bowl, as we did this throughout the year, time and time again, we realized, we keep getting these hits with Mr. Peanut. People love them. People are interacting with them. So if you go to the next page. Oh, next one then.
Hang on, please. Please stand by.
No worries. This is the part where.
Is this what you want, Mike?
I think there's I think next page after the. Yeah, there you go. Oh, next one. Next one. Why it keeps playing. And that concludes our presentation.
All right, hang on.
You have to go to like the slide sorter or something. I don't know how.
Yeah. Please stand by.
No worries.
Are we in the right spot now, Mike?
I just see you. So it's whatever the next page is.
Please stand by.
There you go. So that's good. So, we found right? We found something that people loved. And so what did we do? If you go to the next page, we took it away, right? And if you go to the next page, we killed Mr. Peanut. So this was quite a controversial idea when we brought it to the clients. But we walked in with the data, right? Like we had the receipts, like we had all this information about how people loved him. And on top of that, you know, we talked about like Iron Man or all these fictional characters. Like when these fictional characters like Iron Man or Superman die, they generally get like tons and tons and tons of attention on Twitter and social media and the news and stuff like that. So if our goal was 7.7 billion impressions, like this was the idea. This is what we were going to do. So if you go to the next page, we did, you know, when you do a Super Bowl program, you don't just do the spot, right? You have to do a whole program. It's got to last over 2 weeks. And then you got to like milk every single second out of that time. And this program was set up to do that. There was a cadence to the program that was meant fully to get attention the whole time. So this was the, we actually, I think the way it came out, I think there was like a leak. It came out like it was leaked, and then it was released the next day. And this was the spot that ran. This ran 2 weeks before the Super Bowl. So this is, hit play, please.
I just died in your arms tonight. Oh, look out! Abandon that! We're too heavy. Matt, let go. No, you let go. Hey, Mr. Peanut, no, you don't. Don't do it, Mr. Peanut. No. Maybe he'll be all right. Maybe not.
So like we just put that in a, you know, out of nowhere, we put that into the world, and people lost their goddamn minds, honestly. And the reaction to our hypothesis, which we knew people would care, but it really like it completely took off. So if you go to the next page, please. So this is what I just said. You know, we put it out into the world to see what would happen, and it just like it went absolutely bananas. We had no idea it would be as big as it did. If you go to the next page, please. So all this interesting stuff happening, like, you know, people treated him like a real person because people had such an affinity for him, and it was multi-generational, right? So like I have stories about my sister Christine, like being scared, being at the Atlantic City Boardwalk and being scared of Mr. Peanut there. Like he's been around for a really, really long time. So my parents know him, I know him, kids know him because we put a sneaker out. So the whole world kind of like knew who he was. And when we took this guy away, who's just a mascot, everybody kind of freaked out, right? So like people like quickly went through like the 7 stages of grief. If you look at some of these tweets here, it's like, I dead ass can't believe they killed the Mr. Peanut. My life will never be the same. You know, everybody kind of like projected themselves onto the Mr. Peanut's death, and the way Twitter works, you know, like when something like this happens and you can like write jokes about it or be sad about it or anything, it just gave people a platform to really like to tweet about it. And so I think the day after it happened, he was probably the #1 trending. Let's see what else we got here. You just, what does he say? There better be a new, younger Mr. Peanut coming. I like Peanut, you know, without him, what is your purpose? There was some gratitude, there was grief, people were hurt, people were relieved. You know, people went through a lot of different emotions. If you go to the next page, please. And the other crazy thing is like people started took this like digital social idea, because it just ran on social, it didn't run on TV. The spot never ran on TV or anything like that. It just ran on social. And people started doing like in real life things around Mr. Peanut. So like people did set up memorials and shrines. People like drew pictures and did art around it. Here he's like an angel and he's ascending into heaven. The Crunch Force ones, for a lot of people, which is the thing I showed you before, a lot of people thought like the price of those would go up. A lot of people were trying to get their hands on Crunch Force ones. And we put out like a memorial canister. So it was like a memorial a can of planters that went out, and we had this great little logo down here, which was the monocle with a teardrop. That was a big visual that we used throughout the campaign. If you go to the next page, and then like after it kind of filtered its way through Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, everybody picked it up, right? So like virtually every single media picked it up, from like the ad rags to like Time and Maxim and Huffington Post and CNN and all that stuff. And then it got onto all the morning shows, and it got onto the late shows. There were 2 New Yorker campaign cartoons about it, which was like the height of everything for me, like to get on the New Yorker cartoon. And then we actually got on SNL in 3 different skits. So like we had like absolutely saturated culture in a way that at least nothing I had ever worked on before had done that. It was, and we were just like gobsmacked by the whole thing. We couldn't understand. We were on top of the world. Things couldn't get any better. I'll tell you, I was like ready to retire after this. And go to the next page. And then a real life beloved person died. Like a horrible, horrible tragedy happened right in the middle of it and right at the peak of it, which was absolutely insane. So when Kobe Bryant and his daughter died in a helicopter crash, we went immediately into like crisis mode, because we had, you know, in some ways like trivialized death, right? And then the worst case scenario is like, and we talked about this, like, what if somebody dies while this is happening? And it actually happened, and it happened to somebody that was like beloved, right? Like a hero, like an international hero. Like there's probably 5 people that would have been the worst people. And I'm not being callous, because it's terrible, and like who cares about a fucking Super Bowl campaign, excuse my language, when like real people are dying. But from being in it at that particular time, we were like, it was the worst possible case scenario, not just of like someone dying, but of all of the people that, you know, it was like when Prince died, or when, you know, like Tom Petty died, you know, like it was a big major person that people loved. And it was such a tragedy. I actually had I had another commercial that ran on the Super Bowl, which was something we shot with J-Lo. And the ending of the commercial had J-Lo get into a helicopter, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was in the helicopter. And it was like the joke, like it was the joke of the commercial, and they flew off together, but we had to get rid of that. So the other commercial we made didn't make as much sense. You know, like I had 2 commercials that were affected by this, and it was a terrible tragedy. So like it forced our team to like really come together and like do a lot of soul searching, and a lot of really smart marketing people kind of came together and watched what was happening in the world, and decided that like we were going to kind of continue the campaign. We suspended the campaign. There was stuff that we were going to do in the middle that we actually didn't end up doing. And we suspended the campaign. So there was a lot of discussion about whether we do it or not. But in the end, we decided to move forward with you know, the second part of the story. If you go to the next page. So the second part of the story was, you know, we had a death, and you know, a lot of people were mourning Mr. Peanut, and we wanted to give everybody a chance to kind of say their goodbyes. And that's when we decided to, you know, we were going to have this funeral, right? We're going to have the funeral. Nobody knew what to expect. We had kind of ginned up all this, like what's going to happen next with Mr. Peanut. The Kobe thing was just like added to it, right? Because people were like, what are they going to do? It wasn't just like, what's going to happen? I was like, are they going to do it? Are they going to do it? Like we were talking about maybe doing it, maybe not doing it. You know, like we went through every possible scenario. We decided we were going to do it. So we're going to have Mr. Peanut's funeral on the Super Bowl, and invite 100 million people who clearly love this nut man, and we're going to let them pay their last respects. So this is the commercial that ran on the Super Bowl. It didn't have the title slate at the beginning, actually. Sorry about that. I'm like. Obviously, I'm not sure what happened with the sound there, but there was definitely sound of the Super Bowl. So that was the birth of Baby Nut. So in the darkest moment, Kool-Aid Man cries a magical tear, and Baby Nut is born. So we got a second huge PR spike from that, right? So if you go to the next page, you probably have to go to the slide thing, or it's just going to play again without.
Here we go again.
I feel like I didn't bring up the fact that we like knocked the dust off Wesley Snipes and put him in a Super Bowl commercial, which I think is like a pretty incredible thing. And if you could actually see his acting, and hear his words, he was quite fantastic throughout. He was a very nice man. So again, once again, like the world is talking about Mr. Peanut in a different way. And now we have this character called Baby Nut, right? So again, it got on Saturday Night Live. You know, there was a lot of comparisons with Baby Yoda. It was quite a you know, it's funny. It depends on the platform that you talk about. Like Twitter is brutal, and like there was a lot of love, but there was some not so much love. But like Facebook and TikTok was really nice to him, you know. So it kind of like held a mirror up to those platforms and the type of people that are that are on them and what they do. So go to the next page. So actually during the Super Bowl itself, it was a huge hit, right? So we got this other humongous spike during the Super Bowl. Highest percentage of all brand related tweets during the game. It was #1 trending on Twitter. Other than the halftime show and Donald Trump, who ran a commercial during that, it was the greatest impact on social communities throughout the game. Most eyeballs in the room during the game, and a couple other things as well. The other thing I should say, which I forgot. I always wanted to say this. Like during when the death happened, it was the second day of the impeachment trial, of Trump's impeachment trial, and Baby Nut's death was the #1 trending topic on Twitter, like not Trump's impeachment trial, which was like instead, like if you understand that was the level of insanity that was the death of Mr. Peanut, right? If you go to the next page, please. So again, this is kind of the overall thing. So I said it was nuts again. So we had these two, like if you look at it on a graph, we had these two very huge like PR spikes, two very huge PR spikes. So 96 positive sentiment on Twitter. We got 70,000 new followers on Twitter and on TikTok, almost 1 million brand mentions. Again, it was #1 trending topic. Earned media placements, that's media stuff. Highest lift in awareness of all the brands on the Super Bowl. So that was a really big deal. Like we essentially from an awareness standpoint, you know, we more or less won the Super Bowl. Organic impressions. Go to the next page. And this was the big number, which was our goal was 7.4 billion media impressions, and we actually got 11.4. So it was I don't know, 50% larger, or is that 50% larger than what we asked for. So enough impressions to go around the world 1.4 times. I don't know what that means, but the largest earned program in Kraft Heinz history. So like it was a monster hit, and just like an incredible thing to be a part of. And like I hope you all get to be a part of something like that in your lifetime. Like I'll be dining out on this for the rest of my life, which is incredible. And I was fortunate enough because I work with like an incredible good group of people, like an incredibly brave client that's gonna like, who made the decision to like kill Mr. Peanut, which is like an incredibly brave thing to do. If you think about like, if you are a marketing person at Kraft, you're going to sacrifice your biggest branding asset, and it totally paid off. And you know, they saw big huge spike in sales and all that stuff. And you know, it continues to prove this hypothesis that people give a shit about Mr. Peanut in a big way. Gave us a new character to work with, which was Baby Nut. And the story kind of goes on from there. I'm going to stop and answer any questions that anybody has, because this is kind of the end of the first part of the presentation. Anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Mike, first of all, thank you for coming and telling us about Mr. Peanut. I'm starting to crave peanuts right now myself.
Good. See, it worked.
It's saying something, definitely.
Cool.
Question for you about just anticipating something going wrong as you're putting together this huge campaign right before the Super Bowl. You mentioned discussing what would have happened if someone died as you guys are putting together this huge event in which Mr. Peanut explodes.
Right.
when does typically like risk management become part of the process? And like how high do the stakes have to be? Because I can't imagine you guys factor in like that kind of thing, that kind of thinking for every single project.
No, I mean, you know, listen, anytime you do a Super Bowl commercial and anytime you're spending that much money, like a lot of people are involved. You don't want to like fall on your face on that particular night. Like it's the worst possible thing that you could do. And it's amazing how much it actually happens. Like if you watch the Super Bowl, it's amazing how many ads are just not good. Like you wonder like what happened between like the excitement of saying we're going to do a Super Bowl ad and then like it gets on there and it's like not good. I've done them, you know, I've done a few Super Bowl ads and some of them just weren't that great, you know, and it's like you wonder why that happens. But there's a lot of eyes on it throughout. You know, there's all, you know, there was testing, you know, we tested the spot, we tested the idea, you know, we did our due diligence as we went into it. Like the thing with Kobe, we just like couldn't have anticipated it happening. And we knew that was a risk, you know, that because, you know, when you're, you know, when celebrities die, you know, Sean Connery died last week and, you know, it happens all the time. We had this 2-week period that we would, you know, even if it was happened, we were prepared for it, but we weren't, I don't think we were prepared for, you know, I don't know if you were ever prepared for that. Like, but when the Kobe thing happened, it was a shock. And then it was, you know, it was a time where a lot of reflection and, you know, coming together as a team and saying like, what are we going to do? You know, and I think we made the right call and made the right decision and it turned out the way we wanted it to. But it's still like, it pales in comparison to the fact that like somebody lost, you know, the people that lost somebody, and it was terrible, but it was weird to be connected to that particular thing. But yeah, certain, you know, you're always taking risks anytime you're spending money and putting something out in the world. You know, the risks are, is it going to fall flat? Is it going to sell? Is it going to sell product? Are people going to like it? You know, that's a bigger one. But I think like when you're trying to pull something like this off, like there is always, you know, higher the risk, the higher the reward, the higher the risk, the higher the risk, the higher the reward. I don't know. But yeah.
Great. Thank you.
No worries. Anything else?
I have a question.
Sure.
First of all, thanks for coming. I wanted to hear the words from the murderer's mouth himself. Just kidding. Just kidding. My question is, how did you guys like work up the courage to like make such a like crazy decision? I feel like if I'm like chilling by myself, I'm just like, hey, what if we just like fucking killed Mr. Peanut? I'd be like, oh my God, how do I tell my boss about this without them thinking like, what is wrong with you? No, we're not going to kill Mr. Peanut.
It's funny. It's like, it I believe it just like came up like haha joking in a meeting, like, oh, we're going to do it. And then when we came and like presented the work, and it was, you know, when you do a Super Bowl spot, you don't just come in with one thing, part of several things that we presented. No, kind of thinking that they wouldn't do it. And actually one of the clients started crying during the meeting because she loved Mr. Peanut so much, but she was crying. But like, we later found out that she was like crying because she knew that it was a really great idea and that she wanted to do it and that she'd have to let go of the thing that she loved the most. So yeah, I mean, I hate to say that it wasn't just like, hey, let's kill Mr. Peanut, but there a little bit was let's go kill Mr. Peanut, because the ask of like getting all these impressions was so huge. Like it almost became the only thing we could do to meet this ridiculous goal that was put out in front of us. You know, it was like, we knew what happens when someone dies and what happens on social media and in the media. You know, when you know, like when they kill that, when Iron Man died, sorry to spoil alert for anybody
how dare you
hasn't seen we knew like the reaction that it got. So yeah, but it was like, it was not far from you just saying, fuck it, I'm gonna kill Mr. Peanut, and then putting a deck together around that thought, you know. But it wasn't, you know, it was like founded in insights and fact and what we'd seen happening throughout the years. We were putting work, you know, like putting tweets and, you know, little films and stuff like that out in the world. We found that, you know, people really love it. So.
All right. Thank you.
Anything
I have
else?
a question.
Sure.
I know you briefly mentioned like the potential of having the marketing campaign like convey like or trivializing death, right? I wanted to know, was the full intent of killing off Mr. Peanut and rebranding as Baby Nut, was the full intention, was that fully like the idea of what you were trying to do initially, or did you sort of change things to create Baby Nut as a way to sort of, it's hard to like try to explain it, but was that a way to prevent any of the narratives around trivializing death, or because that was a very difficult time?
Yeah.
Was that always the intention to create Baby Nut out of that, or was that just something?
Yeah, it was always so. Baby Nut was there so it was always, it's funny because Baby Nut was conceived before Baby, it wasn't, but before Baby Yoda was, we sold the campaign with, we're going to kill him, Mr. Peanut, bring him back as Baby Nut in August. And then The Mandalorian came out with Baby Yoda. So we actually, I'm not saying we had the idea first, but it wasn't inspired by Baby Yoda. It just was, like it was more inspired by Baby Groot, I guess.
I was going to say Groot.
Else. It was Groot was there first, and then Yoda was there second. But technically, we had sold the idea, but that doesn't matter in the world.
Gotcha.
So yeah, no, it was always him. He was always, we weren't going to like take Mr. Peanut away and like not have a mascot anymore. We were always going to bring him back. And then, over the course of this year, like as you've seen, he was Baby Nut, and you'll see, I think, did I put that in there? I'm not sure if I put that in there. And then we did a thing in COVID has kind of prevented a couple things that we were planning to do with him, because we had some kind of like milestones and along the way where we, like 10 polls along the way where we were going to have Baby Nut, like we were supposed to do something for Father's Day that ended up not happening, and then we had him turn 21, and now he's like a different thing, and now you can see where it's going. So we had a whole year of what we were going to do with him planned out beforehand, which was a little bit of a rebranding exercise, a little bit of a way to continue to get attention and take the brand in kind of a different direction, which we're kind of in the middle of right now. Yeah.
And then I guess another question, if I may.
Sure.
What do you expect the next year and I guess the future to sort of look like? You mentioned, establishing a sneaker line. Is that going to be a consistent line that's created, or was that just like a one-time thing? Or how far do you think you guys can take the brand? The brand and culture, I think we'll continue to see where we can kind of poke into culture with him. The sales have been really good. I'm trying to think what else we've done. We did a thing with cheese balls where we released a seasoning that's just the cheese from cheese balls. So that was another thing that was really fun that we did. What else did we do? I'm trying to think what else we did this year. It's been a little tough because of COVID and the Facebook ban and all that stuff that happened in between. But yeah, I mean, I think every time we do a thing and he is Baby Nut or whatever he is the next thing, it gets a lot of attention. So we're just trying to find appropriate places to kind of have him show up as we move towards like the next thing, which is in the works. But yeah, I mean, we have big plans for old Mr. Peanut. Gotcha. Thank you.
No worries. Anything else?
One more question.
Sure.
Would you say that you are a persuasive person? And when you're working with a client who does not have courage and you're trying to sell them an idea that stretches their courage, give us some tips on how to do that.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like having conviction in the stuff that you make.
Right.
Like they hire you because they can't necessarily do the things you do. So there's a certain amount of trust involved in that relationship. And I think if you show up with conviction and you can back it up with fact, I think what we do really well at the place I work at is we don't just show up and say, hey, like, I'm a ad guy, you should listen to me. Like we always show up with insights. We always show up with data. We always show up with facts. But I think you need to be, you have to be a persuasive person, because a big part of this job is like going into a room and selling.
We lost
I'll let
Mike.
you froze.
We lost you a little bit.
Rest in peace, sir.
He
I
went
like
the way
Go ahead.
It was a good answer, though.
Yeah.
Going in there with conviction, courage, and facts.
And facts and empathy too. Like
Right,
you have
yes.
to understand like the
Mhm.
position that this person is in
Mhm.
and what them saying yes to your idea could mean for them and what they're going
Mhm.
through every day. Like I think it's important to understand like you are coming in and selling a product that's either going to help someone, hopefully help someone and help them with the goals that they have personally for their business and their brand. Like I believe, and as you get older, like you start to understand this more as like we serve at the pleasure of our clients, right? Like we are there to help their businesses, right?
Mhm.
We're not there to, and hopefully along the way we're going to get some stuff for us. Otherwise, why would we do this? But the work has to work, right? The work has to sell. These guys all have KPIs and goals that they have to meet, and you have to be empathetic to that and understand, like, because you're there to help. That's what they pay you to do. So I think you have to have an understanding of what their world is and have empathy. I think you have to have conviction in your own ideas, and I think you can't just come in and expect people to buy. Some people are better at it than others, but like if you have the facts and the insights to back it up, like that's always helpful.
It's a great answer. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I have another question for you, Mike.
Sure.
You mentioned that you guys leaked the initial video for the Mr. Peanut, kind of like the car incident.
Right.
Got me thinking about just like when things get leaked without people knowing when they're not supposed to be leaked.
Right.
Like from a PR kind of like public image perspective, what would immediately like go through your mind, go through like strategist minds when like at VaynerMedia when like something gets out there and it's not supposed to?
Yeah, I mean, we fake leaked it, right? Like, so we did it. There was a well-intended leak. I think we did something like Mr. Peanut typed a weird thing, and then there was a leak. There was like a link to the commercial, and that didn't get that much attention. Like the thing that got more attention is like when we actually released it. And now I forgot your question.
Oh, it was just like if something was to leak in the not clever, like in the bad way, like, yeah.
Nobody wants that. Yeah. I mean, it usually doesn't work out really very well for agencies when things that they don't want out there get out there.
How does the agency like get ahead of that and make that like use it to their advantage?
I don't know. I feel like stuff that leaks usually isn't like a commercial. I feel it's like an internal memo that nobody's supposed to see. Like that's a bad email. That's outside. Yeah, like that's outside my. That's a little outside. My. I mean, I guess you got to work. You got to have a good PR department. You got to understand crisis management and things like that. Like there are people that know how to do that much better than I do. That's a bit out of my depth, but yeah, like the leak thing we did, I only know that we did it for fake and not for real.
Sure. Thank you.
No problem. Should we press on?
Sounds good. Yep.
It's getting into the evening. All right. So if you go to the next page. So I was trying to find a connection between what happened with Mr. Peanut and what I'm going to talk about next. And people really literally started, but Baby Nuts got pretty beat up in the first part of the year, and people blamed him for a lot of things. And there's, if you go on Twitter and tweet or search like Baby Nut and COVID, a lot of people thought that Baby Nut caused COVID, which I think is really funny. But that brings me to the next part of the presentation, which was like, so in February we had this incredible thing happen, and then a month later, like everything shut down, right? But our clients, like my clients personally, are Kraft Heinz, which makes packaged goods, and Scott's Miracle Grow, which makes lawn and garden stuff. And both those industries like absolutely took off during COVID because people were home and people wanted food that like lasted, like macaroni and cheese and shelf stable stuff. So both those businesses took off. So we had to continue to do work for those businesses, right? So I'm going to take you through 7 or 8 things. This will go a bit faster. That just are different ways of working or kind of my experience of having to make things to put out in the world during COVID, and how, you know, I had to approach things and my team had to approach things a little bit differently. So the first thing that we did, which would happen kind of at the middle of March, end of April, if you go to the next one, was that Kraft wanted to celebrate the folks that were kind of coming to work every day, and like continuing to like make sure that there was no break in the food like the food supply chain. So they wanted to celebrate their workers. And what was really interesting about this is like they'd shut everything down. Like we couldn't get on planes, we couldn't go anywhere. So what we actually did is we sent iPhone packages, iPhone 11s to this factory, and gave them to the factory workers. And we asked them to like go out and shoot footage and shoot interviews themselves, and like complete crap. We talk about risk, like complete crapshoot. We didn't know what was going to happen, but what we got back from them ended up being this. If you hit play.
Given the current situation, we are all affected by what is going on in America today. And I was asking myself, like, what could I do? I feel proud that along with my colleagues, I have been called upon to do what we can to help in this situation. I feel like I'm doing it for all the families in America. We're not going anywhere. We're here. This is bigger than all of us. But together, we can get through this.
So like, it's pretty impressive for like, you know, just sending people iPhones. Like they shot it themselves, which we were gobsmacked. I mean, I think they had like a ringer in there somewhere. Like they had somebody that like had some experience shooting stuff, and they shot beautiful stuff, and they did all their interview. You know, we interviewed like 10 or 15 people. That woman, we thought, just like kind of nailed the message through just talking. So we used her as the voiceover, and then we took all this, you know, we got these phones back, we got all this footage, and we like made a commercial, which is like, you never would do that otherwise. You know, you'd send a camera crew to the factory, and you would get hire a professional director, and he would sit down and he would talk to people and all that stuff. So like they essentially made that themselves, which made it super authentic, because I feel like, you know, over the course of COVID, you saw a lot of commercials that looked like this, which was like, in these, you know, in these trying times with the piano and whatever. If you saw, that was made on April 4th, you know, that was shot on April 4th, which is like right, you know, I think the world went to shit somewhere in the middle or late part of March. So that was right at the beginning of it. So that was something very different. Like we were forced to, you know, we had to make something, and we took a very different approach to how you work, and it turned out really well. But it wouldn't have been my first choice in normal times to send a bunch of phones to people and say, oh, go shoot this commercial. So it was actually a pretty incredible result. So that's one. You can go to the next one. So this is the continued story of Baby Nut, and I put this one in here because it's my kid. Again, we wanted to continue to put work out into the world around Baby Nut. You know, there were challenges with production and stuff like that. So we came up with this idea called Baby Nut Storytime. And what we did was we asked kids. This also started on Twitter. We asked kids to. We gave them a subject or a kind of a storyline around which to write a story about Baby Nut. And then we took those stories that came back that were recorded by kids, and then we did a little animation illustration around them and called it Story Time with Baby Nut. So you hit play on that.
Baby Nut Goes to the Moon by Barrett P. from New York City. Baby Nut was sitting in his Baby Nut-mobile when suddenly the phone rang. It was the president of NASA. He said, "There's an alien invasion about to happen. Will you be willing to go to the moon?" Baby Nut says, let me see if I have any Planters commercials to shoot. One day later, Baby Nut got back to NASA. I have no commercials scheduled. I can go to the moon, said Baby Nut. First, you'll need 2 months of training, said the president of NASA. Baby Nut completed the training in 2 hours. Baby Nut then went to the launch pad. He got in a gigantic rocket that was powered by nuclear peanut fusions. Ground control called out, we're launching in 10 seconds. Baby Nut said, what? I don't even have my seatbelt on. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Baby Peanut braced himself. 2, 1, blast off! The rocket left Earth and flew toward the moon at 1,000,001 miles per hour. Baby Peanut started dancing in the rocket ship, singing, I'm in space, I'm in space. Then he saw the Muttmobile floating in space. He thought, that's weird. As he made his approach to the moon, he was going too fast. He thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. Again. But luckily, he always buckles his seatbelt and he landed on the moon safely. When he opened the spacecraft, he saw a bunch of what looked like walnuts. Rogue walnuts. The walnuts said, we are walnuts from the moon and we will take over Earth. Baby Peanut replied, walnuts? We are all nuts. The walnut said, that was a beautiful speech. We're convinced to not take over the world. Baby Nut saved humankind. The end, or is it?
So again, like a social first idea, user generated content, using what you have, being scrappy to continue to put work out into the world. Do you want to go to the next one then? So this one was really interesting as well. So another piece of business I look after at Vayner is Scott's Miracle-Gro. And again, Scott's Miracle-Gro, over the course of COVID, because so many people were stuck in their house, like I think 22 million people, that number has been disputed a million times, but that's the one they throw around, entered the category. So people were like becoming gardeners and starting gardeners in the backyard because nobody had anything to do, right? And so, you know, we saw this opportunity to kind of like celebrate this thing that was actually going on in real life. So we put this a work out into the world that was kind of like taking this idea that people are stuck at home all the time and showing people that it's actually a good, you know, if you look at the silver lining, it's actually a good thing. So you want to hit play on this one?
Father wears his Sunday best. Mother's tired, she needs a rest. The kids are playing up downstairs. Sister's sighing in her sleep. Brother's got a date to keep, he can't hang around. Our house, it has a crowd. There's always something happening and it's usually quite loud. Our mum, she's so house proud, and nothing ever slows her down. A mess is not allowed. Our house, in the middle of our street. Our house, in the middle of our house, in the middle of our street. Our house, in the middle of our house, in the middle of.
Quite a lovely branding spot, really just kind of celebrating what was going on in the world, based on an insight. You know, the kind of production note on that is that's all made from user generated content. So there are actually companies out there that will like scour the internet, because we didn't shoot anything, right? So there are companies out there that will like scour the internet, find a footage that's appropriate for something like this, and then they'll go and like track down the people that are in, someone who shot something with their iPhone, they'll track them down and get permission and pay the people. And that's another way to produce something. And, you probably saw a lot of those types of commercials during COVID because nobody could shoot anything. But like when they're done right, they're very authentic. They're very heartwarming. When you see really real people and kind of hold a mirror up to like what's going on in the world, and feels like a real mirror, right? Like you're seeing yourself. Like my wife and kid are actually in there. Like I threw some stuff in there to kind of round out the footage. Great song, great line at the end, like classic 60-second branding ad, and it did really well. It did a lot for them. So that was Scott's next one then. This was really interesting as well. So, I'm always excited about ads that aren't really ads, right? Like, so, or something like something like the sneaker. This was another, I guess we created a product here. So, the insight here was that during COVID, like parents were stuck at home with their kids. Kids are lunatics. And a time like breakfast is, at least in my house, is like one of the most stressful times of the day. And if you could just make it like a little bit easier, like take a little bit of pressure off parents, it will make their life significantly better. So we worked with Kraft Mac and Cheese on this one, and we came up with this idea. Hit play then.
It's morning in America 2020. The sun is shining. The birds are singing. And the kids are... With every morning being completely nuts for parents, Kraft wondered if the mac and cheese that kept kids quiet for an entire dinner could do the same for breakfast. We ran it by the internet and got an overwhelming response. So we made it a reality. For the first time ever, we changed Kraft Mac and Cheese Dinner to Kraft Mac and Cheese Breakfast.
Listen to this. I saw that Kraft is replacing the word dinner with breakfast on its iconic blue macaroni and cheese box.
We completely reimagined every letter of a single word on our packaging to turn Kraft Mac and Cheese into America's favorite breakfast food. Parents in desperate need of any kind of lifeline went crazy for the idea. And the media did too.
How about some mac and cheese for breakfast?
Kraft is rebranding its famous mac and cheese.
In limited edition mac and cheese breakfast boxes.
We received over 500 million media impressions, including over 1,100 TV placements on news shows, morning shows, and late night television. But most importantly, Kraft Mac and Cheese Breakfast gave parents some much needed peace in the morning. Like 10 whole minutes of peace total. Kraft Mac and Cheese Breakfast for the win-win.
So again, like just finding a little interesting nugget of an insight in what was going on in the world, and like trying to provide some value to parents around a product that's been around for a long time, and just making a small adjustment, and it got a lot of attention. So that was really fun. And they actually sold the product, and there was a program around it, and they're talking about maybe doing it every year. So that was a fun one to work on as well. You got the next one? We're almost through it. So the next two spots from Mio. This was actually the first, I believe this was the first actual like real life COVID production where like, they opened up California again, and they opened up production in California again, and we actually like went and shot a commercial. We didn't go, obviously, like everything was done through, we were all on Zoom. Like we got a feed from the camera, so we could go see what was going on with actors. We had a line to the director, and we could talk and communicate and stuff like that. But fortunately, in both of these spots, they take place in like the most socially distanced places in the world, which is one is in a desert and one is on Mars. So they became really like this kind of symbol for the perfect way to actually shoot a COVID commercial. So why don't you hit this one?
Water? Are you kidding me? Hello?
We've reestablished contact.
Hey! You're here! Heads up. Stay Anybody coming? I'll catch the next one.
Water tastes like, well, water. So we fixed it. Neo.
You go to the next one. You just blow through these. Sorry, Joe, I didn't get the slate off. I know how to do that.
Water?
Why don't you...
Let's try this one again.
That might be the one that's like 15 gigs or something. Why don't you... Oh, really? Is it working? Why don't you skip this one? You go... Oh.
Water? Why? I'm safe! Right? No, I'm good. I'm gonna walk. Let's go!
Water tastes like, well, water. So we fixed it. Neo.
So there you go. We Fix Water. So those were actual productions, which was, you know, I think it was the first like major commercial production in California once they opened the whole thing up again. That happened in like June or July. And I think we have one more, and then I'll let you get on with your lives. This went on for a long time. Okay, next one. I think this is the same one again.
Yep. Hang on.
Oh, this is fun. So like a lot of what we did was animation. So we worked with the animation studio that did Wallace and Gromit, and I think Coraline. And you know, animation is, I guess, the most socially distanced way to kind of work on to make a commercial or film anyway. So a lot of the work that was getting done during this time was animation, and this was a rebranding and relaunch of Jet Puffed marshmallows, and we created a lovely little ditty and a lovely little world called Marshmallow Nation, and it looked like this. Hit play.
There's a place called Jet Puff Nation, yummy good sensation, marshmallow population. We don't get bent out of shape, we bend into something great, 'cause life's a sweet creation. We go back to the drawing board, so we get to draw some more. We don't sprinkle joy, we let it flow. Who cares if we miss the boat? It's a great excuse to float. We can look up at the rainbow. Spilled milk doesn't make us cry. No, we put it in our cocoa. A chorus of marshmallows. We are fluffy through and through. Bounce off me and we'll hug you. Jet of the fluffy side of life.
So a little happiness, a little joy, or in a particularly dark time. So that was all you know, 3D animation, working with you know, this company that, you know, that's known for doing this kind of stuff. So that was fun. And last but certainly not least, I'll talk about, we can run through this one. So I'm sure a lot of you guys are on TikTok, and brands are starting to find their way onto TikTok. This was another one for Scott's, which is like a 150-year-old lawn and garden company. Again, we saw this kind of trend that was happening on TikTok, where people were getting on TikTok, and at the same time, because of COVID, at the same time, people were doing, you know, a lot of stuff with their lawns. So we came up with this idea called Do the Scots, which was a combination of many. The Scots was a dance that was a combination of many lawn related dances, like the lawnmower and the sprinkler and a few others. We got this influencer called Jason Derulo, who's a TikTok guy, and a few others to kind of like put the thing out in the world, and it actually like really blew up. And you know, the thought of like a company that sells, you know, manure and lawn seeds and, you know, stuff that kills weeds was trending on TikTok was kind of an amazing thing. But again, it was like in a world where like this can be the thing that you use to make things, you're not held back by the fact that you like have to have a production meeting or call somebody, you know, like this stuff is already happening out there, and kind of tapping into it was another way that we were trying to do something different. I mean, I would argue you should be doing this all the time now, whether it's COVID or not. But for us, like this was another way to get something out in the world for our clients. So this is Do the Scots.
In 2020, when folks were stuck at home, one platform blew up like no other: TikTok. And while TikTok completely dominated culture, many brands steered clear of this controversial platform. Scott's, America's oldest lawn care company, was experiencing quite the pandemic boom of their own. And this 153-year-old brand saw a chance to connect with a younger audience. Introducing Do the Scots. We recruited 5 TikTok influencers, including megastar Jason Derulo, to help launch a dance featuring all your favorite lawn care-related moves. The lawnmower, the seed spreader, the hoe, the sod roll, and of course, the sprinkler. And suddenly, a 153-year-old lawn care company was trending. Over 300,000 people took the challenge to Do the Scots, creating over 600,000 pieces of original content. Do the Scots received over 2 billion views and was one of the most successful TikTok brand activations of 2020. Do the Scots was part of a larger effort by Scots that helped bring over 21 million new people into the category in 2020. And it got a whole new generation to really care about grass.
I wanted to express my...
So again, you know, using a different, you know, finding a different way in, finding a different way around it. And that's, and if I'm going to leave you with anything, because I feel like we're going a bit long here, I would say this, like, I think conflict, I think hitting a wall is an opportunity, right? Like, so when you're faced with these challenges, I think it forces you to think differently. It forces you to be a problem solver. And I think there's creativity, like unmined creativity in digging a little deeper to solve problems. So like, it's something that we should be doing every day as an industry, and we don't do it so well all the time. But I think, you know, the interesting thing about COVID is it forced us to think differently. And I think anytime that happens, you're going to find your way to some like really, really interesting work. And with that, I will conclude my presentation and let you all get back to your lives. But I really appreciate you taking the time and listening to me. I realize, like, you don't even get a break when you see those case study films, because it's my voice on the case study film. But I appreciate you all taking the time and letting me share some of the work that I've done this year. And I look back on it and I was like, oh yeah, I've had a pretty good year. I've done some nice stuff. It's fun. It's fun to put it all together and watch it, see it as well. So thanks so much for the opportunity to kind of share this with you. It was I really enjoyed it.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Really random, but did Scott's, the lawn brand, get wrapped up in the shortage of toilet paper in any way during COVID?
No, because because there's two different things. So there's Scott's the lawn brand, and there's Scott paper towels. So they did not.
Okay.
That's
that. I know. I was tweeting it. I know. I was tweeting and I was all that. I just, wondered if people if it crossed or if they were wrapped up in
no. There was there was somebody. There was some there was some mac and cheese shortages. That was something that happened. There was some food stuff, but I think they sorted that out. That was the only thing that affected companies. But both Kraft and Scott's Miracle Grow made shit tons of money during COVID because people were, for the reasons I talked about, people were stuck at home and doing things. So world never slowed down because the clients that I have are continued to like sell and sell and sell and sell because people needed stuff. People needed food, and then people needed, you know, stuff to do at home. So yeah.
Important supply chain questions, Scots and Scots. Mike, fantastic stuff.
Thank you.
You know, I've got 700 questions, but you're not here for me.
Right.
I can track you down later, but I do think it's impressive what you guys do with very mature brands.
Right.
You know, and that's great. And then I think for the students out there, I think if there's a big takeaway on top of everything else, is the need for that emotional intelligence that unlocked a lot of the ideas that we saw here. You know, from you're struggling at home, you got to feed the kids. The lawn is your domain now, and even just being aware that Mr. Peanut was something people cared about. So that's fantastic. So, but let's open the floor to all the students here. Pick Mike's brain while we have him before he falls over into a lump,
a stupor.
But just jump in, unmute yourself, or you want to throw it in the chat, whatever you like, however you want to reach out to Mike.
I had a raised hand just to be safe, but quick question.
Sure.
As someone who's getting more interested in production and having my own production company and working with clients, what would you say are some of the beginning steps to getting started with that, and how would you go about finding clients and building your sort of resume, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, start by starting, right? Like, so I think you have to build a reel, right? Like, are you a shooter or an editor, or
shooting mostly?
Mostly shooting. So
yeah,
that's a really good question.
Also looking to do a little more just with animation, as you mentioned before, with the previous company.
I think you have an incredible networking tool called the internet, right? Where you can like put your own stuff out there and make sure that people see it. Tag people you like, tag brands you like. You've never had more access to decision makers than you have right now. Use LinkedIn. You know, I think you have to show that show your ability, showcase your abilities with the things that you've done, personal projects, things like that. It always kind of starts with that, right? And then I would use Twitter to reach out to people, or reach out to people you like. You know, it's funny that at Vayner, you know, that we have a big production thing at Vayner, and I don't know if you know Gary Vaynerchuk, but he's got a whole team of people kind of working around him, like shooting videos around him all day and things like that. And all those guys were just guys that were, you know, guys on TikTok and guys on, you know, on YouTube that were like shooting their own stuff, and he kind of plucked them up and made them part of the team. So I think the best thing you could do, that you have total control of, is like, you know, your own work and what you put out into the world, and who you want to see it, because you have absolute total control of like getting to those people. Slide into their DMs, right? Like find people you want to work with and people that you want to work for, and show them what you can do. That would be my advice.
Gotcha. Thank you.
No worries. Anyone else?
Yeah. Hey, how are you? Thanks again for doing it tonight.
No worries.
Too loud? Cool. My dogs magically start barking when I start speaking. It's quite weird.
Now, how do you pronounce your last name? Do you say
Labrizzi
or Izzy?
Labrizzi, yeah.
Labrizzi. So I'm Pierantozzi. I'm the same way. I met these Italian guys from Italy are like, oh yeah, you're saying it wrong. It's a Pierantozzi, not Pierantozzi. It's like pizza, you know. So I spelled my name wrong.
It's funny because it's one of those like Americanized versions. Like my Italian family members, they almost pronounce it like TCH, Labrizzi, and it's
like pizza.
Exactly.
Right, sorry to interrupt.
No
I
worries.
saw those two Z's and it triggered me. I'm sorry.
It's all good. It's fun talking about names. I'm into that too. Going back to the Super Bowl commercial, and like this might be a bit of a far-reaching question, but at what point do you risk versus reward paying massive amount of money for a Super Bowl commercial, you know? Or is it just something that like you pitch it to planters and they say, all right, just do the Super Bowl and we'll go from there?
I think it happens both ways, but I think most of the time, like the client has already decided that they want to make that commitment, you know, like in a lot of cases, like, you know, that's a big decision for a company because it's a lot of money. So, you know, I think in this case, the client decided that they wanted to be on the Super Bowl, and, you know, we went and brought them ideas. But sometimes, you know, as an agency, you can convince. If you come up with a great idea, you can convince. You know, it's like, that's a nice thing about the way, you know, we work. If you don't treat your clients like they're the enemy, if you treat them like they're part of the team, like, you can get to this kind of stuff faster, because you build that level of trust. And then, like, you know, it's not preposterous for me to go in and say, you know, hey, let's do a Super Bowl commercial. Maybe they'll say yes, you know, but I think a lot of the time they kind of decide beforehand that they're going to do it, because it's such a big investment.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. Thanks
No,
for answering
no
my
worries.
question.
Yeah, sure.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
Ignore the cat, but
I
would we
like
be
the
able
cat.
to? Oh, thank you. She's a princess. She must
Aw.
supervise everything I do. Hence the presence.
As she should.
Yes. Is it okay if we add you on LinkedIn?
Absolutely. Please do.
Dope.
Actually, and if you have questions beyond this, like, reach out. I'll be happy to get back to you. I'm happy to help you out with anything, or if, you know, when you get out, you're looking for a job, and you know, hit me up. I'm happy to help in any way I can.
You know it. Girls got to get a job after graduation.
Yeah, you could. Okay, good. Cool.
Do you
What else? We got time for a few more questions here before we let Mike go have dinner.
I have a question. Was it hard to get Scott's kind of on board with the whole TikTok thing, or was that ground kind of paved already? And were they trying to acquire a younger audience as a part of their goal, or was that just kind of like a byproduct as, you know, the nature of TikTok?
I think the nice thing about where I work is, like, there's no, and, you know, if somebody has an idea based on the way we work and the clients we work with, it gets, you know, it gets its day in court. Actually, what happened on this one is Gary Vaynerchuk, who is like the, you know, the multi-millionaire that owns the company, and like internet influencer, and, like, you know, hustle guy, you know, he I think it was actually his idea. And, like, when he goes into the room, he can just sell stuff. And I think he knows Jay, you know, he's got connections with all these TikTok guys. So he kind of like brokered the thing and brought it all together. But there was definitely a goal there that they have you know, a lot of people that use that stuff, or people that own houses and, like, have white New Balance that they, you know, that they use to mow their lawn. So they're always looking, like every client, you know, they're always looking to expand their audience. And, you know, the interesting thing that happened this year is a lot of kids went, and kids, but, like, you know, a lot of young millennials and zillennials and Generation Z kind of, like, went back home and you know, moved back in with their parents and didn't have anything to do. So, like, there was an opportunity to kind of, like, bring this whole group of people into the world of, like, gardening and stuff like that. I think gardening is quite a meditative thing. So I think, like, a lot of things align to get more people into the category. And I think a lot of those people were younger people. So there's definitely, like, every client, especially these older brands that I work on, they're all looking to, like, land that audience, because, you know, there's an end to, you know, if you're like 85 years old, like, you're not going to be around to use Scott's for very much longer. So they have to kind of, like, replenish.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
That's it. Eventually all your customers die.
Yeah. You got
it's interesting though to see that there's a cross-pollination from the older generation to the young, where these things that are traditionally thought of, you know, like Mike said, the white New Balance dad joke guy does the lawn, but all of a sudden the 22-year-old is home. The 22-year-old hooks into the lawn, and then the dad is on TikTok before you know it.
Yeah,
so,
I know. That's,
you know, so that it's, you know, it'll be an interesting thing. Some social scientist who's smarter than all of us in 5 or 8 years can study this moment in time.
It was a weird confluence of those two things that, like, blew up during COVID. So that's the reason I showed that one.
That's great. A couple more questions before we let Mike go. This is your time. This is it. We got a guy from the top of the pyramid here in front of us. So let's grab him.
I added you on LinkedIn. Thanks again.
Right, cool.
I'll have a bunch of
No
questions
worries.
for you.
Yeah, no worries.
Dennis is not wasting any time.
Good for you, Dennis.
He's Dennis. You graduate this December, or you got another semester?
I have another 2 semesters to go.
Two
So
semesters. All right.
just
All
knocking
right.
it out. Yeah.
I'll pop my email up on here as well. So if you guys want to reach out directly.
Yoink.
All right. While we wait for a couple questions, like some phrases that jumped out at me was the whole idea of moneyballing creativity.
Right.
Right. So, numbers drive so much of the business now that never did. I love the way that you guys take the minimal
viable product.
Minimal viable product. Because, and Therese is one of our faculty members. We come from the world of the maximum
viable product.
Right? It's like here's 6 months worth of research and and selfishly, part of why you're here, selfishly for me, is I need to inform the next curriculum that we have.
Right.
We got to get leaner. We got to get faster. We'll never match industry, but we got to be able to help these students be more nimble when they get out.
Yeah.
And it's great to hear this.
What I always think is great about the generation that's in school now and that's kind of come out of school over the last 4 or 5 years, like I had to work to become creative. Like you guys and the group before you had all the tools to be creative, as you were growing up, so that by the time you got to your first job, and like maybe you've had a viral hit, or maybe you're like a TikTok influencer or stuff like that. Like I had to become something, like I had to work and like toil in a little room to like try and become a quote unquote creative, where like people coming into the industry now like already have that skill set. They can edit, they can shoot, they can write, they can perform, they can come up with ideas, they can put stuff out in the world that people like. Like I didn't have that opportunity at the time. So like I learn a lot from the folks that are just starting at my place. Like like the lawn guy, like I need to stick around for a few more years. Like I'm like a knowledge vampire with when kids come into the agency, like tell me, show me, what can I do, how do you do it, like, because we all need to have that skill set. And like as important it is to like know how to write a commercial or whatever, it's so much more important to like understand those platforms and what works, because that's what people are doing now. Like look at people with the election. People are on their phones all fucking day, just like scrolling and scrolling and doom scrolling and scrolling. Like I haven't watched TV, since the night of the election, but I'm getting all my information from my phone. Like that's where you have to be. That's where you have to live. So it's a you guys you're coming out and you're already so far ahead of like, people that came out in the last, 10 years before, 15 years before. So you should know your value and know what you bring to the table, because it's something that every agency is looking for right now and every agency needs. A bunch of dinosaurs like me trying to do TikTok dances. Nobody wants to see that, right? So, know your worth and understand your worth when you're coming out, and know what you bring to the table, because it's probably more than you probably have more of what the world needs than the person that you're sitting across from in an interview. So just understand that, don't be cocky about it, but know your worth.
That's it. I think that's a great note to leave on, Mike. Know your worth. Push the dinosaurs like us out the back door.
Please, sooner the better. Please, the sooner the better. Put me out of my misery.
Mike, come join us. Come join us.
Exactly. Like academia is looking pretty good. I'm gonna push you out.
That's great. Well, Mike, again, thank you for coming down tonight.
No
it's been awesome. My notes are big. I'm sure the students are even bigger. And again, thank you for that open invite, guys. The email in the chat is gold.
Right.
Grab onto that. Don't be an asshole with it. But it's all about networking. I always tell my writers, you got to be three things. You have to be articulate. And whatever you guys do, if you're not a writer, whatever that version of articulate is, you got to be culturally aware, which is the whole TikTok, all that stuff. And then you got to be creative, and then once you do those three things, then you need an entree. You got to find a way to get in. Mike worked his way up from the local level, and made it to the big show. Teresa and I did the same thing, where he's this only your start has to be small. And then if you just, like Mike said, at 5:30, you punch over what you're working on. If you're working on lawn care products, doesn't mean it has to be a lawn care product spot. Just do something awesome, and then you guys will climb real fast.
Yeah.
So again, all the students, thank you for dropping by.